"Could you dance with me? My ex is watching from the bar," she said, unaware he was a Millionaire CEO. It was supposed to be just another Friday night at a downtown bar. Loud music pulsing through speakers, the sound of glasses clinking together in toasts, the bittersweet smell of whiskey mixing with perfume and cologne, laughter and conversation creating a wall of noise that some people found comforting and others found overwhelming. Lila Parker stood just inside the entrance, her hands gripping her small purse like it was a lifeline. She hadn't been to this bar in 6 months. She hadn't been to any bar in 6 months, actually. Her friends had finally convinced her to come out tonight, saying she needed a reset. "You can't hide forever," her best friend Sophie had said. "It's time to get back out there." But standing in the doorway, watching the crowd of people who all seemed to be having the time of their lives, Lila didn't feel like she was getting back out there. She felt like she was walking into a nightmare. Because there, sitting at the bar with his arm wrapped possessively around a woman's waist, was Ryan Hayes, her ex-boyfriend, the man who had promised her forever and then shattered that promise in one cruel conversation, the man who had told her she wasn't enough, the man who was now married to someone else, someone wealthy, polished, perfect. And they were both laughing, looking happy, looking like they belonged together in a way that made Lila's stomach turn. She froze in the doorway, her breath catching in her throat. Sophie, who'd been walking ahead, turned back and saw Lila's face go pale. "Oh no," Sophie said, following Lila's gaze. "Is that Ryan?" Lila finished quietly. "And his wife." Sophie grabbed Lila's arm. "We're leaving, right now. We'll go somewhere else." But something in Lila resisted. She'd spent 6 months hiding, 6 months avoiding places she might run into him, 6 months letting his words echo in her head, making her question her worth, 6 months being afraid. "No," Lila said, her voice stronger than she felt. "I'm not running again." "Are you sure?" Sophie asked, concern evident in her voice. "I'm sure," Lila lied. But as she walked further into the bar, trying to act casual and unaffected, Ryan's eyes found hers across the crowded room, and that same cruel smirk she remembered so well spread across his face. A smirk that said, "Look at you, still alone, just like I predicted." A smirk that said, "I was right to leave you." A smirk that made Lila want to disappear. Before I continue with this story, I want you to tell me where you're watching from and what time is it. And if this is your first time here, please hit that subscribe button and ring the notification bell so you never miss my upcoming story. To understand why seeing Ryan felt like a punch to Lila's chest, you need to know what he'd done to her 6 months ago. They'd been together for 3 years, 3 years that Lila had believed were leading somewhere permanent. Ryan Hayes was 29 when they met, working as a junior partner at a marketing firm. He was ambitious, charming, and he'd swept Lila off her feet with dinner dates and weekend trips and promises about their future. Lila was 26, working as a graphic designer for a small company. She made decent money, but nothing extraordinary. She lived in a modest apartment with a roommate. She drove an old car that needed frequent repairs. She was normal, regular, ordinary, in all the ways that Ryan had initially claimed to love. "You're real," he'd told her once. "You're not trying to be something you're not. I love that about you." But somewhere during their 3rd year together, something changed. Ryan got promoted to senior partner. His salary doubled. He started attending networking events with wealthier clients. He started comparing himself to colleagues who had more, bigger houses, newer cars, wives with trust funds. And slowly, almost imperceptibly at first, he started looking at Lila differently, looking at her like she was a problem he needed to solve, looking at her like she was holding him back. The change showed up in small comments at first. "Maybe you should look for a job at a bigger firm, one that pays better." "Do you really need a roommate? It looks kind of juvenile to still have roommates at your age." "That dress is nice, but maybe invest in some better brands. People notice these things." Lila had tried to brush off the comments, telling herself Ryan was just stressed about work. But the comments became more frequent and more cutting. Then came the night that destroyed everything. Ryan had taken her to an expensive restaurant, the kind with white tablecloths and a wine list that cost more than Lila's monthly rent. She'd thought maybe he was planning to propose. She'd even worn her nicest dress and gotten her hair done professionally. But halfway through dinner, Ryan had set down his wine glass and looked at her with an expression that wasn't love or affection. It was pity mixed with frustration. "Lila, we need to talk," he'd said. Those 4 words that never led anywhere good. "I've been doing a lot of thinking," Ryan continued, "about us, about where this relationship is going, about what I need in a partner." Lila's hands had started shaking. "What are you saying?" "I'm saying that I don't think this is working anymore," Ryan said, his voice maddeningly calm. "I'm at a different place in my life now. I'm moving up in my career, meeting important people, building a future. And I need someone who can match that, someone who can fit into that world." "I can fit into that world," Lila had said desperately. "I can try harder. I can—" "It's not about trying harder," Ryan interrupted. "It's about who you fundamentally are. You're a nice person, Lila. You're kind and you're sweet. But you're not ambitious. You're content with your little graphic design job and your small apartment and your modest life. And that's fine for some people, but it's not enough for me." Those words, "not enough for me," had hit Lila like a physical blow. "You're breaking up with me because I don't make enough money?" she'd asked, unable to believe what she was hearing. "I'm breaking up with you because we want different things," Ryan said, as if that made it better. "I want someone who can be a real partner in building an impressive life, someone who comes from the right background, who has the right connections, who understands the world I'm trying to succeed in. That's not you, Lila, and I don't think it ever will be." Lila had sat there in that expensive restaurant, tears streaming down her face, while Ryan paid the bill and left without looking back. She'd taken an Uber home, crying in the back seat while the driver pretended not to notice. She'd spent the next 3 days in bed, unable to eat or sleep or do anything but replay Ryan's words over and over. Not enough, not ambitious enough, not impressive enough, not worthy of love. Her friends had rallied around her, telling her that Ryan was an idiot and she deserved better, but the damage was done. Ryan's words had burrowed deep into Lila's psyche, making her question everything about herself. Maybe she wasn't ambitious enough. Maybe she had been holding him back. Maybe she was just ordinary and forgettable and not special enough to deserve lasting love. For 6 months, those thoughts had haunted her. 6 months of avoiding social situations. 6 months of declining dates that friends tried to set up. 6 months of believing that she was fundamentally lacking something essential. And now here she was, in this bar, watching Ryan with his new wife, the woman who was apparently enough. The woman who came from money, the woman who wore designer clothes and real diamonds, the woman who fit perfectly into Ryan's ambitious life. Lila found a table in a corner with Sophie and their other friend Jessica, trying to position herself so she wouldn't have to see Ryan. But it was impossible not to notice him. He was loud, commanding attention, making sure everyone knew he was there. His wife, Lila couldn't remember her name, had deliberately avoided learning it, was beautiful in that polished, expensive way. Perfect hair, perfect makeup, perfect everything. The kind of woman who probably never questioned her worth, because the world had always told her she was valuable. "Stop looking at them," Sophie said gently, touching Lila's arm. "They're not worth your energy." "I'm not looking," Lila lied. But then Ryan's eyes found hers again across the bar, and this time he didn't just smirk. He leaned over and whispered something to his wife, who turned to look at Lila. They were talking about her, probably pitying her for being alone, probably confirming Ryan's narrative that he'd made the right choice leaving her. Lila felt heat rush to her face, part embarrassment, part anger, part something else she couldn't name. She stood up abruptly. "I need air." "Lila, wait," Sophie started, but Lila was already moving toward the bathroom, anywhere away from Ryan's judgmental stare. She splashed cold water on her face in the bathroom, trying to calm down. She looked at herself in the mirror and heard Ryan's voice in her head. Not ambitious enough. Not impressive enough. Not enough. "Stop it," she told her reflection. "Stop letting him define you." But knowing she should stop and actually stopping were two different things. When Lila emerged from the bathroom, she tried to walk confidently back to her table. But halfway there, she made the mistake of glancing toward the bar. Ryan was looking right at her, that smirk still on his face. And in that moment, Lila made a decision. She wasn't going to let him see her as the pathetic ex-girlfriend who never moved on. She wasn't going to give him the satisfaction of thinking his cruel words had destroyed her. She was going to show him she was fine, even if it was a complete lie. Her eyes scanned the bar frantically, looking for anyone who might help her salvage this situation. That's when she saw him. A man sitting alone in a corner booth, partially hidden in shadow. He was tall, even sitting down. Lila could tell he was probably over 6 feet. Dark hair, sharp jawline, wearing a crisp white dress shirt with the sleeves rolled up to his forearms. An expensive watch caught the light as he raised a glass of water, not alcohol, to his lips. He wasn't drinking. He was just observing, his eyes taking in the scene with an intensity that suggested he was analyzing everything. There was something calm about him, something steady that stood in stark contrast to the chaos of the bar. He looked like he didn't quite belong here, like he was from a different world entirely. But more than that, he looked safe. And right now, Lila desperately needed safe. Before she could second-guess herself, before fear or common sense could stop her, Lila walked directly toward him. Her heart was pounding. Her palms were sweating. This was insane. She didn't know this man. He could be anyone. But desperation made people do reckless things. She stopped in front of his booth, and he looked up at her with eyes that were a striking shade of green. Eyes that showed surprise but not annoyance at being approached. "I know this is strange," Lila began, her voice trembling despite her best efforts to sound confident. "I know you don't know me, but I need a favor, and I'm willing to pay you or buy you drinks or whatever you want." One dark eyebrow rose slightly. "What kind of favor?" Lila took a deep breath. "Could you dance with me? My ex is watching from the bar and I just need him to think I've moved on. Just one dance. That's all. Please." The man studied her face for a long moment, and Lila saw his eyes flick briefly toward the bar, probably spotting Ryan. Then his expression softened slightly, and a hint of a smile played at the corners of his mouth. "You don't need to pay me," he said, his voice deep and surprisingly warm. "And you definitely don't need to beg." He stood up, and Lila had been right. He was tall, at least 6'2". He was also broader than she'd realized, with the kind of presence that naturally commanded attention. Up close, she could see he was probably in his early 30s, with the kind of confident bearing that came from success and self-assurance. He extended his hand to her. "Then let's make him jealous, shall we?" Lila took his hand, noting how warm it was, how steady. He led her toward the small dance floor where a few couples were swaying to a slow song. As they walked, Lila was acutely aware of Ryan watching them. She could feel his eyes burning into her back. Good, she thought fiercely. Let him watch. When they reached the dance floor, the stranger turned to face her and placed one hand on her waist while keeping hold of her hand with the other. "I'm Ethan, by the way," he said. "Since we're going to be making your ex jealous together, you should probably know my name." "Lila," she replied. "And thank you. You have no idea how much I needed this." "Oh, I think I have some idea," Ethan said, a knowing look in his eyes. "The guy at the bar with the fake tan and the expensive watch, that's your ex?" "That's him," Lila confirmed. "And the woman with him? His wife. They got married 3 months after he dumped me." Ethan's expression hardened slightly. "Sounds like a real winner." "He told me I wasn't enough for him," Lila said, then immediately regretted the words. "Sorry. You don't need to hear my sob story." "Hey," Ethan said gently, pulling her slightly closer as they swayed to the music. "If we're going to sell this, you need to relax. Stop thinking about him. Focus on me instead." Lila looked up at him, meeting those green eyes, and found that was surprisingly easy to do. There was something magnetic about Ethan, something that made the rest of the bar fade away. "Tell me something about yourself," Ethan said. "Something that has nothing to do with your ex." "Like what?" "Anything. What do you do? What do you love?" What makes you happy? Lila thought for a moment. I'm a graphic designer. I love creating things. Logos, branding, visual identities. There's something satisfying about taking someone's vague idea and turning it into something concrete and beautiful. That sounds like a real talent, Ethan said, and he sounded genuinely interested. Are you good at it? I think so, Lila said. My clients seem happy. I've been thinking about starting my own design studio someday, but I haven't had the courage yet. Why not? Lila hesitated. I guess I'm afraid of failing, of proving that I'm not ambitious enough or talented enough to make it on my own. Let me guess, Ethan said. Your ex made you feel that way. Lila nodded, embarrassed. He was wrong, Ethan said with absolute certainty. Anyone who makes you doubt your own abilities is either threatened by you or too limited to see your value. Either way, that's their problem, not yours. Something about the way he said it, so matter-of-fact, so confident, made Lila actually believe it might be true. They continued dancing, and Lila found herself relaxing for the first time since entering the bar. Ethan was an excellent dancer, leading her smoothly through turns and dips that made her laugh despite herself. You're good at this, Lila said. I had a mother who insisted I learn, Ethan replied. She said every man should know how to dance properly. Something about it being respectful to women. Your mother sounds wise. She was, Ethan said, and there was a note of sadness in his voice that suggested she was no longer alive. From the corner of her eye, Lila could see Ryan watching them. His smirk was gone. He was actually frowning now, leaning toward his wife and saying something that made her look annoyed. Good, Lila thought again. But then something shifted. She realized she wasn't thinking about Ryan anymore, wasn't dancing with Ethan to prove a point. She was dancing with him because she was actually enjoying it. Enjoying the way his hand felt on her waist, enjoying the way he looked at her like she was the only person in the room, enjoying the way he made her laugh and feel seen. The song was ending, and Lila felt a pang of disappointment, but as the music faded, Ethan leaned closer and said something that made her heart skip. You know, you didn't need your ex to notice you. You walked in tonight and the whole place did. Lila felt heat rush to her cheeks. You're just being kind. I'm being honest, Ethan corrected. You're striking. The way you carry yourself, even when you're nervous. The way your eyes light up when you talk about your work. The way you laugh. Your ex is an idiot for not seeing it, but that's his loss. Lila didn't know what to say. No one had spoken to her like this in 6 months. No one had made her feel like she might actually be worth something. Thank you, she said softly. Thank you for saving me from humiliation tonight. You didn't need saving, Ethan said, echoing his earlier words. But maybe I can take you to dinner sometime. Somewhere quieter, where you won't need an excuse to dance with me. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a business card, pressing it into her hand. Lila looked down at the card, and her breath caught. The name printed in elegant lettering read, Ethan Cole, CEO, Cole Enterprises. Lila knew that name. Everyone knew that name. Cole Enterprises was one of the largest tech companies in the country. Ethan Cole had been on the cover of Forbes magazine last year. He was worth billions. And he'd just spent the last 15 minutes dancing with her, making her laugh, making her feel beautiful. She looked up at him in shock. You're Ethan Cole. I am, he confirmed with a slight smile. Why didn't you tell me? Would it have changed anything if I had? Lila thought about that. I probably would have been too intimidated to ask you to dance. Exactly, Ethan said. And then I would have missed out on meeting someone genuinely interesting. He gave her hand a gentle squeeze. Think about dinner. My number's on the card. Then he released her hand and walked back toward his booth, leaving Lila standing on the dance floor, holding his business card and feeling like the entire world had just shifted. Lila walked back to her table in a daze, clutching Ethan Cole's business card like it was made of gold. Sophie and Jessica immediately bombarded her with questions. Who was that? Sophie demanded. He was gorgeous, Jessica added. Where did you find him? I just asked him to dance, Lila said, still processing everything that had happened. And he said yes? Just like that? Sophie looked amazed. "He said yes," Lila confirmed, "and then he gave me his number and asked me to dinner." "That's incredible," Jessica squealed. "See, we told you that you needed to get back out there." Lila finally looked at the business card properly, reading the elegant font. Ethan Cole, CEO of Cole Enterprises. The address listed was in Manhattan's most exclusive business district. "Do you know who this is?" Lila asked her friends, holding up the card. Sophie grabbed it, and her eyes went wide. "Ethan Cole? The tech billionaire Ethan Cole? Billion with a B?" Jessica leaned over to look. "Holy shit, Lila. He's been on magazine covers," Sophie said. "He's like one of the most eligible bachelors in the country, and he just asked you out." Lila felt dizzy. "This can't be real. Men like him don't ask out women like me." "Why not?" Sophie challenged. "You're beautiful and talented and funny. Stop letting Ryan's garbage make you think you're not enough." But even as her friends celebrated, Lila couldn't shake the feeling that this was some kind of mistake, that Ethan had been being kind, helping her out of a bad situation, and didn't really mean the dinner invitation. She glanced back toward his booth, but he was gone, disappeared as mysteriously as he'd appeared. Across the bar, Ryan was still watching her, but his expression had changed. The smirk was completely gone now. He looked confused, maybe even worried. His wife was talking to him, clearly irritated that his attention was elsewhere. For the first time in 6 months, Lila felt a small spark of satisfaction. Not because Ryan was uncomfortable, but because she'd just had a moment of genuine connection with someone who made her feel valued, someone who made her remember that she was more than Ryan's cruel assessment of her worth. That night, Lila went home and stared at Ethan's business card for hours. She must have picked up her phone to text him a dozen times, but each time doubt stopped her. What would she even say? "Thank you for the pity dance. Thanks for helping me make my ex jealous. By the way, I'm just a regular person with a regular life, nothing special. Are you sure you meant to give me your real number?" Every message she drafted sounded desperate or self-deprecating or just wrong. Finally, 3 days later, Lila worked up the courage to send a simple text. "Hi, this is Lila. From the bar on Friday, thank you again for the dance. It meant more than you know." She hit send before she could overthink it, then immediately regretted it. Too formal, too distant, not enough personality. But 30 seconds later, her phone buzzed with a response. "I was hoping you'd reach out. I was starting to think I'd imagined our dance. How's Tuesday for dinner?" Lila read the message 3 times, her heart racing. He actually wanted to see her again. This wasn't just kindness or pity. He genuinely seemed interested. "Tuesday works," she texted back, trying to sound casual. "Where should I meet you?" "I'll pick you up. What's your address?" Lila hesitated before sending her address. It was a modest apartment building in a neighborhood that was safe, but definitely not fancy. Nothing like where a billionaire CEO probably lived. But she sent it anyway, refusing to be ashamed of her life. Tuesday arrived faster than Lila expected. She'd spent the entire weekend and Monday obsessing over what to wear. Her closet was full of normal clothes, nice enough for work or casual dinners with friends, but nothing that seemed appropriate for a date with someone like Ethan. She'd almost called Sophie in a panic, but then she remembered what Ethan had said. He'd been attracted to her authenticity, to who she really was, not some polished version of herself. So she chose a simple navy dress that she felt confident in, paired with comfortable heels and minimal jewelry. When her building's intercom buzzed at exactly 7 o'clock, Lila took a deep breath. "Hello? It's Ethan. I'm downstairs." Lila grabbed her purse and headed down, her stomach full of butterflies. When she stepped outside, she found Ethan leaning against a sleek black car. Not a limousine or anything ostentatious, just a nice sedan. He was wearing dark jeans and a grey button-down shirt, looking somehow both casual and incredibly put together. "You look beautiful," he said when he saw her, and the compliment seemed completely genuine. "Thank you," Lila replied. "You clean up pretty well yourself." He smiled and opened the car door for her. "I thought we'd go to a place in Brooklyn. It's quieter than most Manhattan restaurants and the food is incredible." As they drove, Lila found herself relaxing into conversation. Ethan asked about her work, seeming genuinely interested in her design projects. He asked about her childhood, her family, her dreams. He listened intently when she talked, asking follow-up questions that showed he was actually paying attention. It was so different from the last year of her relationship with Ryan, when he'd barely listened to anything she said, always distracted by his phone or his own thoughts about work. The restaurant Ethan chose was perfect, intimate but not stuffy, elegant but not intimidating. They were seated at a quiet corner table with a view of the Brooklyn Bridge lit up against the night sky. "This is beautiful," Lila said. "I'm glad you like it," Ethan replied. "I wanted somewhere we could actually talk without shouting over loud music or crowds." Over dinner, their conversation flowed naturally. Lila told him about her dream of opening her own design studio someday. "What's stopping you?" Ethan asked. "Honestly, fear," Lila admitted. "Fear of failing, fear of not being good enough, fear of proving that my ex was right about me not being ambitious." "Your ex was an idiot," Ethan said bluntly. "And fear is just information. It tells you that something matters enough to be scary. The question is whether you're going to let that fear control you or use it as motivation." "Is that how you built your company?" Lila asked. "By not letting fear control you?" "Actually, I built my company while being terrified every single day," Ethan said with a laugh. "Fear of failing, fear of letting down the people who believed in me, fear that I wasn't smart enough or capable enough. But I showed up anyway. That's all success really is, showing up even when you're afraid." "That's surprisingly encouraging coming from a billionaire," Lila said. "Being a billionaire doesn't make me immune to fear or doubt," Ethan said. "If anything, it makes those feelings more intense because the stakes get higher. But I've learned that the only way to build something meaningful is to be willing to risk failure." As dinner progressed, Lila learned more about Ethan. He'd grown up in a middle-class family in Philadelphia. His father had been a teacher, his mother a nurse. Neither had expected their son to become a tech mogul, but they'd always supported his interests in computers and programming. His mother had passed away 3 years ago from cancer, which explained the sad note in his voice when he'd mentioned her at the bar. His father was still alive, living comfortably in a house Ethan had bought him, though he still volunteered at his old school because he loved teaching. "Family is everything to him," Ethan said. "Money doesn't change that." "Does money change anything?" Lila asked curiously. "It changes everything and nothing," Ethan replied. "It gives you options and security, which is important, but it doesn't make you happy. It doesn't give you purpose. It doesn't guarantee meaningful relationships. Some of the loneliest people I know are incredibly wealthy." "Are you lonely?" Lila asked, then immediately regretted the personal question. "Sorry, that's too forward." "No, it's honest," Ethan said. "And yes, I've been lonely. Work consumed my 20s and early 30s. I built something successful, but I sacrificed a lot of personal relationships to do it. I've dated, but nothing ever felt genuine. People were interested in what I represented, the money, the status, the lifestyle, not in who I actually am." He looked at Lila directly. "That's why Friday night was so refreshing. You had no idea who I was. You just needed help with an awkward situation, and we ended up having a genuine moment. No pretense, no performance, just two people connecting." "I'm still not sure why you helped me," Lila admitted. "You could have easily said no." "Why would I say no to dancing with a beautiful woman?" Ethan asked. "Because I was clearly a mess. Because I was using you to make my ex jealous. Because I'm sure you have better things to do on a Friday night than help strangers with their emotional baggage." "Want to know the truth?" Ethan said. "I'd been sitting in that bar alone for 2 hours, watching people interact, feeling completely disconnected from normal life. My entire existence has become board meetings and investor calls and business decisions. I couldn't remember the last time I'd done something spontaneous or fun, and then you walked up and asked me to dance, and it was the most real thing that had happened to me in months." Lila smiled. "So I did you a favor?" "You absolutely did," Ethan confirmed. "You reminded me that life is supposed to be lived, not just managed." After dinner, Ethan drove Lila home, but neither of them wanted the night to end. They sat in his car outside her building, talking for another hour about everything and nothing. Books they loved, movies that made them cry, embarrassing childhood stories, dreams they'd given up on, and dreams they still held. "I should let you get inside," Ethan finally said, though he sounded reluctant. "But I'd like to see you again, soon." "I'd like that too," Lila said. "Friday?" Ethan suggested. "There's an art gallery opening I need to attend. It'll be boring speeches and pretentious wine, but if you're there, it might actually be enjoyable." "You want me to go to a gallery opening with you?" Lila asked, surprised. "Only if you want to, no pressure." Lila thought about it. A gallery opening with a billionaire CEO would probably mean photographers and important people, and the kind of world that had intimidated her when Ryan had tried to drag her into it. But something about the way Ethan asked, genuinely wanting her company, not trying to show her off, made it feel different. "Okay," she agreed, "but I don't have anything appropriate to wear to something like that." "Wear what makes you comfortable," Ethan said. "Trust me, you'll be the most beautiful woman there regardless of what you're wearing." He walked her to her building's entrance, and Lila felt her heart racing as he leaned in. But instead of kissing her lips, he kissed her cheek gently. "Good night, Lila," he said softly. "I'll text you details about Friday." Lila floated up to her apartment, feeling like she was in a dream. The next day at work, Lila could barely concentrate. Her mind kept replaying moments from dinner with Ethan, the way he listened to her, the way he made her laugh, the way he seemed genuinely interested in her thoughts and opinions. At lunch, she finally told her co-worker and friend Rachel about the date. "Wait, you went out with Ethan Cole?" Rachel practically shouted. "The Ethan Cole?" "Shh," Lila hushed her, looking around the office. "Yes, and he wants to see me again." "This is insane," Rachel said. "You're dating a billionaire." "I'm not dating him," Lila corrected. "We've had one date. It might not go anywhere." "Are you kidding? From what you've told me, he's clearly into you. This is like a fairy tale." But Lila couldn't shake the feeling that fairy tales weren't real, that eventually Ethan would realize she was just ordinary, that he'd get bored or find someone more suited to his lifestyle, that Ryan had been right about her not being enough. That evening, as Lila was leaving work, her phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "Lila, it's Ryan. We need to talk. Can we meet for coffee?" Lila stared at the message in shock. Ryan wanted to talk to her, after 6 months of silence. After marrying someone else and rubbing it in her face, she typed back, "Why?" His response came quickly. "I saw you at the bar Friday night, with that guy. I just want to make sure you're okay, that you're not getting yourself into something dangerous." Lila almost laughed at the audacity. Ryan was concerned for her, Ryan who'd destroyed her confidence and abandoned her, Ryan who'd told her she wasn't enough. "I'm perfectly fine," she texted back. "Better than fine, actually. You don't need to worry about me." "Who was he?" Ryan asked. "That guy you were with?" And there it was. Ryan wasn't concerned for her well-being. He was jealous and curious, and probably threatened. "That's none of your business," Lila replied. "We're not together anymore. You made that very clear. Who I spend time with isn't your concern. I'm just trying to look out for you, Lila. You're not exactly experienced with guys like that. Wealthy guys. They're different. They play games." The nerve of him pretending to care after everything he'd done. "You mean guys like you became?" Lila shot back. "Thanks for the warning, but I can take care of myself." She blocked his number before he could respond. Her hands were shaking, but this time it wasn't from pain or sadness. It was from anger and something else. Satisfaction. Ryan was clearly bothered by seeing her with Ethan. His carefully constructed narrative about her not being enough was being challenged. But more importantly, Lila realized she didn't actually care about Ryan's reaction. She wasn't interested in making him jealous or proving him wrong. She was interested in Ethan because Ethan was interesting, because he made her feel valued and seen and excited about life again. Ryan's opinion was irrelevant. Friday arrived, and Lila spent way too long getting ready for the gallery opening. She'd bought a new dress, nothing too expensive but elegant and sophisticated, black and simple, with a neckline that was tasteful but still flattering. She did her makeup carefully and wore her hair down in loose waves. When Ethan picked her up, his face lit up when he saw her. "You look stunning," he said, and Lila actually believed him. The gallery opening was in Manhattan, in a space that screamed money and culture. As soon as they walked in, Lila felt out of her depth. Everyone looked important and wealthy and confident, women in designer gowns, men in expensive suits, waiters circulating with champagne and tiny appetizers. "Breathe," Ethan murmured, taking her hand. "You belong here just as much as anyone else." "Do I?" Lila whispered back. "These people all seem to know each other. They're all part of some exclusive world." "They're just people," Ethan said. "Wealthy people, sure, but still just people with the same insecurities and fears as everyone else. Don't be intimidated by appearances." As they walked through the gallery, looking at abstract art that Lila didn't really understand, several people stopped to talk to Ethan. Business associates, investors, other CEOs whose names Lila recognized from news headlines. Each time Ethan introduced her simply as Lila, a talented graphic designer I'm getting to know. Not as his date, not possessively, just as a person worth knowing in her own right. One woman, a sharply dressed executive, actually engaged Lila in conversation about design, asking thoughtful questions about her work. "Graphic design is such a valuable skill," the woman said. "I'm always telling our marketing department they need to invest more in good design. It can make or break a brand." "That's exactly what I believe," Lila said, warming to the topic. "Good design isn't just about making things look pretty. It's about communicating a message clearly and memorably." They talked for 10 minutes about branding and visual communication, and by the end, the executive had given Lila her card. "Call me next week," she said. "My company might have some projects you'd be perfect for." After she walked away, Ethan smiled at Lila. "See? You belonged here. You just needed to believe it." The evening continued, and Lila found herself actually enjoying it. The art was interesting once Ethan explained some of the concepts behind the pieces. The conversations were engaging when she stopped being intimidated and just participated, and Ethan never left her side, always making sure she felt included and valued. Toward the end of the evening, they were standing in front of a particularly striking painting when Ethan said, "Can I tell you something?" "Of course," Lila replied. "I've been to hundreds of events like this. They're usually tedious networking obligations, but tonight was actually fun. Because you were here, you make everything more interesting." Lila felt warmth spread through her chest. "You make me feel like I'm interesting, like I'm worth listening to." "That's because you are," Ethan said. "Lila, I need you to understand something. Your ex was wrong about you. Completely, fundamentally wrong. You're talented and smart and genuine. Those qualities are rare, especially in my world. Don't ever let anyone make you doubt your worth again." Standing in that gallery, surrounded by expensive art and wealthy people, Lila felt something shift inside her. Maybe Ryan had been wrong. Maybe she was enough exactly as she was. Maybe ambition wasn't measured by salary or status, but by passion and dedication to something meaningful. Maybe love wasn't about fitting into someone else's idea of perfection, but about being accepted completely as yourself. "Thank you," Lila said softly, "for seeing me, for making me remember who I am." "I should be thanking you," Ethan replied, "for reminding me what really matters." He took her hand, and they stood there together, no longer feeling out of place. Just two people who'd found something real in a world often dominated by appearances. As they left the gallery, Lila realized she hadn't thought about Ryan once all evening, hadn't compared herself to his wife, hadn't worried about whether she measured up to some impossible standard. She'd just been herself, and that had been enough, more than enough. In fact, it had been exactly right. Over the next few weeks, Lila and Ethan saw each other regularly. Dinners at quiet restaurants, walks through Central Park, a cooking class that ended with them laughing over burnt pasta, a Sunday morning farmer's market where Ethan bought fresh flowers and insisted on carrying all of Lila's bags. With each date, Lila felt more confident and comfortable. Ethan never tried to change her, or push her into his world. Instead, he seemed genuinely interested in experiencing her world. He visited her small apartment and loved the artwork she'd hung on the walls. He met Sophie and Jessica and charmed them both with his genuine interest in their lives. He asked to see her design portfolio and spent an hour giving thoughtful feedback. "You should absolutely start your own studio," he said. "This work is exceptional." "It's scary," Lila admitted. "Everything worth doing is scary," Ethan replied, "but I believe in you. And more importantly, you should believe in yourself." His confidence in her was infectious. For the first time since Ryan's cruel dismissal, Lila started to believe that maybe she could build something meaningful. That maybe she was capable of more than she'd given herself credit for. One evening, about 6 weeks after their first date, Lila and Ethan were having dinner at his apartment. He'd cooked surprisingly well, and they were sitting on his balcony overlooking the Manhattan skyline. "I need to tell you something," Ethan said, setting down his wine glass. Lila felt her stomach drop. "That sounds ominous." "It's not bad," he assured her quickly. "At least I hope it's not. I just need to be honest about something." "Okay," Lila said nervously. "That night at the bar, when you asked me to dance, I told you I was there by chance. That wasn't entirely true." Lila felt confused. "What do you mean?" "I'd actually been going to that bar for a few weeks," Ethan admitted. "I was feeling disconnected from normal life. Everything in my world felt transactional and superficial, so I started going to regular places, bars, coffee shops, parks, just to observe people living their lives, trying to remember what that felt like." "So, you were there on purpose," Lila said slowly. "I was there looking for something real," Ethan clarified. "I didn't know what that would look like, but then you walked up to me, scared and vulnerable and completely authentic. You weren't trying to impress me. You just needed help. And in that moment, I felt more connected to another human being than I had in years." He took her hand. "I'm telling you this because I don't want you to think I helped you out of pity or because I was bored. I helped you because something about you called to me. And every moment I've spent with you since has confirmed that initial instinct." Lila processed this information. "So you were lonely too?" "Desperately," Ethan admitted. "I had everything society says should make you happy: money, success, respect. But I was lonely in ways that money can't fix, until I met you." "I was lonely too," Lila said softly. "Ryan made me feel like being alone was my natural state, like I was someone who would always be left behind." "You're not someone who gets left behind," Ethan said firmly. "You're someone who deserves to be chosen, every single day, by someone who sees your worth." He stood up and pulled Lila to her feet, guiding her into a slow dance on his balcony, even though there was no music. "Just like that night at the bar," he murmured. "Except this time it's not for show," Lila said, wrapping her arms around his neck. "This time it's real." "This time it's everything," Ethan agreed, and he kissed her. It was their first real kiss, gentle at first, then deeper, filled with all the feelings they'd been building toward for weeks. When they finally pulled apart, both were smiling. "I'm falling in love with you," Ethan said quietly. "I need you to know that." "I'm falling in love with you too," Lila replied, "and it terrifies me." "Why?" "Because last time I fell in love, I got destroyed. Last time I gave someone my whole heart, they told me it wasn't enough." Ethan cupped her face gently. "I'm not him. I will never be him. Your heart is more than enough for me. You are more than enough." Lila felt tears prick her eyes. "Promise me something. Anything. If you ever stop feeling that way, if I ever become not enough for you, tell me directly. Don't let me wonder. Don't let me question my worth for months. Just be honest." "Lila," Ethan said seriously, "I promise you that won't happen. But if somehow you needed to hear it, I would tell you honestly and kindly. You deserve that respect." They spent the rest of the evening talking about their future, not in vague terms, but in real, concrete ways. Ethan wanted to know about Lila's dream design studio, what it would look like, what kind of clients she'd work with, what her goals were. Lila wanted to know about Ethan's life beyond work, his hobbies, his dreams that had nothing to do with business, who he was when he wasn't being a CEO. By the time Ethan drove her home that night, they both understood something fundamental had shifted. This wasn't casual dating anymore. This was the beginning of something lasting. 3 months into their relationship, Lila finally took the leap she'd been too afraid to take before. She quit her job and started her own design studio. Ethan offered to invest, but Lila refused. "I need to do this on my own," she explained. "Not because I don't trust you or appreciate the offer, but because I need to prove to myself that I can build something independently." "I understand," Ethan said, "but let me know if you need anything. Advice, connections, or just someone to celebrate small victories with." Starting her own business was terrifying and exhilarating in equal measure. Lila worked long hours, often until midnight, building her client base and establishing her brand. Ethan supported her completely, never making her feel guilty about the time her work required. He'd show up at her apartment with dinner on nights when he knew she'd forget to eat. He'd send encouraging texts when he knew she was stressed about a difficult project. He'd celebrate every new client like it was a major victory. Within 6 months, Lila's studio was thriving. She had a steady stream of clients and had even hired an assistant to help manage the workload. More importantly, she was proud of herself in ways she'd never been before. She'd built something real with her own talent and determination. She was succeeding on her own terms. Ryan's words, "not ambitious enough, not enough," had lost their power completely, because Lila had proved them wrong, not to Ryan but to herself. One Saturday afternoon, Lila was working in her small office space when Sophie called. "You need to see this," Sophie said, sounding urgent. "Ryan posted something on social media about you." Lila felt her stomach clench. "What did he post?" "Just look. I'll wait." Lila opened Instagram and found Ryan's account. He'd posted a photo of himself and his wife at some charity event, both dressed formally and smiling, but it was the caption that made Lila's blood boil. "Grateful for the life I've built and the right person by my side. Sometimes you have to leave behind people who can't keep up to find someone who matches your ambition. No regrets. Blessed mutual power couple, living my best life." The post had dozens of comments from mutual acquaintances, most congratulating him or complimenting the photo, but everyone who knew about their relationship could read between the lines. This was directed at Lila. This was Ryan's way of publicly declaring that leaving her had been the right choice. "Are you okay?" Sophie asked. "Actually, yes," Lila said, surprised to realize she meant it. "He's pathetic. He's been with his wife for almost a year, and he's still so insecure that he needs to publicly justify leaving me. Do you want to respond? Put him in his place?" Lila thought about it. A year ago, she would have been devastated by this post. She would have believed Ryan's narrative that she wasn't ambitious enough or successful enough. But now she saw it for what it was, a desperate attempt by an insecure man to convince himself he'd made the right choice. "No," Lila said, "I'm not going to respond. That's what he wants, to get a reaction from me to prove I'm still affected by him, but I'm not. I'm too busy building my own life to worry about his opinion of my old one." "That's my girl," Sophie said proudly. "You've come so far." After they hung up, Lila sat with her feelings for a moment. Ryan's post should have hurt. It was designed to hurt, but instead, she felt nothing but pity for him. He was so focused on proving he'd upgraded, on showing the world he'd made the right choice, that he couldn't just enjoy his life. He was still thinking about her, still comparing, still trying to justify his actions. That wasn't the behavior of a happy man. That was the behavior of someone who wasn't as confident in his choices as he pretended to be. Lila picked up her phone and texted Ethan. "Are you free tonight? I want to take you somewhere." "Always free for you," he texted back. "What did you have in mind?" "The bar where we met. I want to dance with you again." That evening, Lila and Ethan returned to the downtown bar where everything had started. It was a Friday night again, just as crowded and loud as it had been months ago. But this time, Lila walked in feeling completely different. Last time she'd been broken and scared and desperate. This time, she was confident and happy and exactly where she wanted to be. "Why did you want to come here?" Ethan asked as they found a table. "Because this is where my life changed," Lila said. "This is where I stopped running from my past and started building my future. I wanted to come back and appreciate that moment." Ethan smiled and took her hand. "Want to dance? I thought you'd never ask." They moved to the dance floor, and Lila felt like she was reliving that first night, but with completely different emotions. Last time, she'd been pretending to be okay. This time, she really was okay. Better than okay, actually. As they swayed to the music, Lila looked up at Ethan. "Thank you." "For what?" "For seeing me that night. For taking a chance on someone who was a complete mess. For helping me remember who I was." "You weren't a mess," Ethan said. "You were someone going through a hard time, and you would have been fine without me. You're stronger than you give yourself credit for." "Maybe," Lila agreed, "but having you believe in me made it easier to believe in myself." As the song ended, Ethan surprised her by not leaving the dance floor. Instead, he took both her hands in his. "Lila, I need to tell you something." "Okay," she said, curious about his serious tone. "That night when you walked up to me and asked me to dance, I thought I was helping you. I thought I was doing a kind thing for a stranger who needed assistance. But the truth is you helped me so much more than I helped you." "How?" "I was lost," Ethan admitted. "I'd built this successful company and made all this money, but I'd forgotten what any of it was for. I'd forgotten how to connect with people on a real level. I'd forgotten what it felt like to care about someone outside of business relationships. You reminded me. You showed me what really matters." He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small box. Lila's breath caught. "I know we've only been together for 9 months," Ethan continued. "I know some people would say that's too fast, but I've never been more certain of anything in my life. I love you, Lila. I love your creativity and your kindness and your determination. I love the way you laugh and the way you see the world. I love who I am when I'm with you." He opened the box to reveal a beautiful ring, elegant and simple, just like Lila preferred. "Will you marry me? Will you build a life with me? Not because of what I can give you materially, but because we make each other better. Because we choose each other, every day, exactly as we are." Lila was crying now, happy tears streaming down her face. Around them, people on the dance floor had stopped to watch, but Lila didn't care about the audience. She only cared about the man in front of her, offering his whole heart with complete sincerity. "Yes," she said, her voice breaking with emotion. "Yes, I'll marry you." Ethan slipped the ring on her finger and pulled her into a kiss as the people around them applauded. When they finally pulled apart, both laughing and crying, Lila looked around the bar. And that's when she saw him. Ryan, standing near the entrance with his wife, both of them frozen, staring at the scene they'd just witnessed. Ryan's face was a mixture of shock and something that looked like regret. His wife looked irritated, probably tired of her husband's obvious preoccupation with his ex-girlfriend. For a moment, Lila and Ryan's eyes met across the crowded bar, and Lila felt nothing but gratitude. Gratitude that Ryan had left her. Gratitude that his cruel words had pushed her to rebuild herself. Gratitude that his rejection had led her directly to Ethan. She gave Ryan a small, genuine smile, not triumphant, not cruel, just peaceful. A smile that said, "Thank you for letting me go so I could find where I truly belonged." Then she turned back to Ethan, to her future, and didn't look back. Ryan and his wife left shortly after, but Lila didn't notice or care. She was too busy celebrating with the man she loved. The next few months were a whirlwind of wedding planning and continued business growth. Lila's design studio was featured in a prominent business magazine as one of the top new creative agencies in the city. The exposure brought even more clients, and Lila had to hire 2 more employees to keep up with demand. She was building exactly the kind of business she'd dreamed about, on her own terms, with her own vision. Ethan continued to support her from the sidelines, celebrating her victories without trying to take credit or control her business. They planned a wedding that reflected both of them, Elegant, but not ostentatious. Intimate, but not excluding the people they loved. About 2 weeks before the wedding, Lila received an unexpected email from Ryan. She almost deleted it without reading, but curiosity got the better of her. The email was long, rambling, and clearly written after considerable thought. He apologized for how he'd ended their relationship. He admitted that he'd been cruel and that his words about her not being ambitious enough had been projections of his own insecurities. He confessed that seeing her with Ethan had made him realize what he'd lost. He acknowledged that his current marriage wasn't making him happy, that he'd chosen status over substance, and that he regretted it every day. He asked if she'd be willing to meet for coffee, to talk, to maybe find closure. Lila read the email twice, then showed it to Sophie. "What are you going to do?" Sophie asked. "Nothing," Lila said. "I'm not meeting him. I don't need his apology or his confession. That's his burden to carry, not mine." "Are you going to respond at all?" Lila thought about it, then typed a brief reply. "Ryan, I appreciate your apology. I hope you find happiness, whether in your current marriage or elsewhere, but I've moved on completely, and I don't think a meeting would be beneficial for either of us. I wish you well, but this is goodbye. Lila." She hit send and felt a weight lift that she hadn't realized she'd been carrying. Ryan's opinion no longer mattered. His regrets weren't her concern. His validation wasn't something she needed anymore. She'd built a life she was proud of, found a love that was genuine, and become a person she actually liked. That was enough. More than enough. The wedding was perfect in every way that mattered. Lila wore a simple ivory dress that made her feel beautiful without trying to be something she wasn't. Ethan wore a classic black tuxedo and cried when he saw her walking down the aisle. They exchanged vows they'd written themselves, promises about choosing each other daily, supporting each other's dreams, and building a partnership based on mutual respect and genuine love. Lila's family was there, and Ethan's father, who welcomed Lila warmly as his new daughter. Sophie and Jessica stood as bridesmaids, both crying through the entire ceremony. There were no ex-boyfriends in attendance, no drama, no comparisons to anyone else's wedding. Just two people who'd found each other at exactly the right moment, making a commitment to build a life together. At the reception, Ethan pulled Lila onto the dance floor for their first dance as husband and wife. "Remember the first time we danced?" he asked. "How could I forget?" Lila replied. "That was the night everything changed." "I knew that night that you were going to be important to me," Ethan admitted. "I didn't know how important, but I knew you were someone special." "I thought you were just being nice," Lila said, "helping out a stranger who was having a bad night." "I was being selfish," Ethan corrected. "I wanted to spend more time with you. The dance was just an excuse." "Best excuse ever," Lila said, pulling him closer. As they swayed to the music, surrounded by people who loved them, Lila reflected on the journey that had brought her here. A year ago, she'd been broken, convinced she wasn't enough, afraid to trust anyone, including herself. Now, she was married to an incredible man, running a successful business, and genuinely happy with who she was. The difference wasn't Ethan's money or status. It was the way he saw her, as complete, as valuable, as enough exactly as she was. It was the way he supported her dreams without trying to control them. It was the way he celebrated her victories and supported her through challenges. It was the way he chose her, every single day, with intention and certainty. That was what real love looked like. Not someone trying to mold you into their ideal. Not someone whose love was conditional on you meeting certain standards, but someone who loved you for who you authentically were and wanted to build a life alongside you, not above you or in spite of you. Years later, when people asked Lila how she and Ethan had met, she'd smile and tell the story about the bar and the ex-boyfriend and the desperate request to a stranger, about the dance that changed everything, about finding love when she wasn't looking for it, about discovering that sometimes the worst heartbreak leads you directly to your greatest happiness. So your ex being at that bar was actually the best thing that could have happened, people would say. "No," Lila would correct gently. "The best thing that happened was me finding the courage to ask a stranger to dance. That was me choosing to show up for myself instead of running away. Everything else followed from that one brave moment. Because that was the real lesson Lila had learned. Not that she needed someone to rescue her, not that wealth or status determined worth, but that she had always been enough. She just needed to believe it herself. Ryan's cruelty had made her doubt, but Ethan's love had reminded her of a truth she'd temporarily forgotten. Her worth wasn't determined by who loved her or left her. It was inherent, unchangeable, and entirely independent of anyone else's opinion. She was talented and kind and determined and valuable, with or without a partner, with or without success, with or without anyone else's approval. She was enough. And once she'd truly internalized that truth, everything else had fallen into place. Lila's design studio continued to grow, eventually expanding to a full agency with 12 employees. She became known in the industry not just for her design talent, but for her mentorship of young designers starting their careers. She remembered what it felt like to doubt yourself and made sure her employees knew their worth. Ethan scaled back some of his work commitments to spend more time on the things that actually mattered to him. He and Lila traveled extensively, making up for all the experiences he'd missed while building his company. They started a foundation together, focusing on providing resources and mentorship to young entrepreneurs from disadvantaged backgrounds. They had 2 children, a daughter and a son, who grew up understanding that success wasn't about money or status, but about building something meaningful and treating people with respect. And they never stopped dancing. Every year on their anniversary, they'd return to that bar where everything started. They'd order drinks and find a spot on that same dance floor. And they'd dance, remembering the night a desperate woman asked a stranger for help and found a love story instead. "Do you ever wonder what would have happened if I hadn't been at that bar that night?" Ethan asked during one of these anniversary visits. "All the time," Lila admitted, "but I think somehow we would have found each other anyway. We were both looking for something real. The universe just helped us along." "What if you hadn't been brave enough to ask me to dance?" "Then I would have gone home heartbroken and spent more time being miserable," Lila said. "But eventually I would have healed. I would have started my business. I would have built a life I was proud of. Because that's what I needed to do for myself, not for anyone else." "So you didn't need me to save you," Ethan teased. "I never needed saving," Lila corrected. "I needed someone who saw me. And you did. But the saving? That was something I had to do myself." She pulled him closer as a slow song started playing. "That's what I love most about our story," Lila continued. "It's not about a billionaire rescuing a damsel in distress. It's about 2 people who were both a little lost finding each other and choosing to build something real together." "Best choice I ever made," Ethan said. "Second best," Lila replied. "The first was believing you when you said I was enough." They danced until the bar closed, just like they had on that first night. And when they finally left, walking hand in hand into the Manhattan night, both felt grateful. Grateful for heartbreak that had led them to each other. Grateful for courage that had made Lila ask a stranger to dance. Grateful for the genuine connection that had grown into lasting love. But most of all, grateful for the journey that had taught them both the same essential truth. That real love doesn't require you to be more than you are. It doesn't ask you to change or improve or become someone else. Real love sees you completely, accepts you fully, and chooses you anyway. Not despite your flaws or because of your achievements, but simply because of who you are at your core. That was what Lila had found with Ethan, and that was what made all the heartbreak that came before worth it, because it had led her exactly where she needed to be. If this story touched your heart, I need to hear from you right now. Drop a comment telling me where you're watching from and what time it is. Have you ever been told you weren't enough by someone who was supposed to love you? Have you ever had your heartbreak lead you to something better than you could have imagined? Have you ever found love when you stopped looking for it and started believing in yourself? I read every single comment, and I want to know your story. Because stories like Lila's matter. They remind us that other people's opinions don't define our worth. They remind us that heartbreak, as painful as it is, sometimes clears the path for something better. They remind us that real love supports rather than diminishes, celebrates rather than criticizes, and accepts rather than tries to change. If you've ever been made to feel like you're not enough, please hear this. You are enough. Exactly as you are right now, you are enough. Your worth isn't determined by your salary, your status, your appearance, or anyone else's opinion of you. Your worth is inherent and unchangeable. The right person will see that, and until they show up, you need to see it for yourself. If you haven't subscribed to this channel yet, please do that right now. Hit that subscribe button. Ring that notification bell so you never miss a story that will remind you of your worth and inspire you to believe in yourself. Like this video, if Lila's journey resonated with you, share it with someone who needs to hear that they're enough exactly as they are. Because everyone deserves to know they're valuable. Everyone deserves to be with someone who sees their worth. Everyone deserves a love story that lifts them up rather than tears them down. Thank you for watching Lila and Ethan's story. Thank you for believing that real love exists and that it's worth waiting for. Thank you for understanding that the right person at the wrong time is actually the wrong person, and the right person at the right time changes everything. I'll see you in the next one. Take care of yourself. Know your worth. Wait for someone who celebrates you instead of tolerating you, and never let anyone make you feel like you're not enough, because you are. You always have been. You always will be. Until next time.